Honorable Ssemujju, and a quick comment from you.
When we are processing the Administration of Judiciary Act, one of the contentious issues was about retirement packages.
Mm.
In the understanding and the argument the government made was that these judges, having presided over some of the cases resulting in two sentences, death and so on and so forth, we needed to retire them with a very good package.
Mm.
I remember it was my proposal, because Parliament was about to drop a Chief Justice retiring with a whole salary. And I defended it and succeeded. I want to understand, the lawyers can help me, how we are going to give retirement packages to people who are acting in 1 year. Because the judges, if I recall, of the Court of Appeal and I think High Court, they were supposed to be retiring with 75% of their salary and other benefits. And some lawyers made the argument, and it was persuasive, that many of these judges leave. I think at that time they were using a former principal judge, Ntabugoa, that when he left the bench, because they sit every day to listen to cases up to the evening, in the process, many of them get disabled.
Mm.
And I think the lawyers were raising money to take him for treatment. Say, this is an embarrassment. Someone who has served the country, and you can't look after them in retirement.
And they live a very restricted life.
Yes.
They can't do many things that other people do. The interaction is limited.
So the judges, especially Nicholas, tell me how we are going to deal
the lawyers
with the retirement packages
of acting
of 1 year acting judge or 2 year acting. But in the general context of how Museveni behaves, I was at the university, and when he was quarreling about judges, he had wanted the requirement of practice lowered, because at that time, and I think he still is, 10 years for High Court. I don't know, that's 15 for the rest of the...
15 for the Court of Appeal, 25 for
yeah.
the Supreme Court.
Because at that time, his target was the old judges that he found in courts. And he said, no. These ones, the age must be 3 years, because he wanted to appoint his own judges. And I want to thank the judges who have stood their ground, appointed by Museveni in Museveni's era. And that's why his son says he is shocked by because he thinks all these are workers, how can they rule against us? Because all the judges in the Supreme Court today are judges appointed under Museveni. And sometimes, like he does, he is the one who advises the Judicial Service Commission on who to appoint. And then the Judicial Service Commission later also advises him to appoint his own judges. When
that's not being fair to Justice Kavito, is it?
I want to give you
the chairman of the Judicial Service Commission.
I want to give you examples.
What evidence do you have?
Listen, don't hurry.
No, I'm asking.
When former MP Patrick Chigundu died, at his funeral in Masaka, the wife called Jenny Nandaura, she said, I want to thank the president for giving me this job so that I continue educating Chigundu's children. That was her address. That the reason she was given a job to become a High Court judge was to go and look after Chigundu's children. And it was in the public.
Well, he's the appointing authority, isn't he?
Yeah.
Under Article 141?
Yeah.
I thought the consideration for judges is not...
Wasn't she qualified?
It does not matter, Honorable Miriam.
It's a process argument that the names must come from the Judicial Service Commission.
Yes. Yeah.
And once the names go to the president,
he has no option, because he doesn't pick. He shouldn't.
So you cannot bring other names that have not been vetted by the Service Commission on the list.
And when you begin thanking him that the main reason he appointed you is to go and look after children of his former friend.
No, but you know that one, sorry to interfere, but you know people in this country, everybody thanks the president. Everybody, even when they Because he is the government, he is the everything. And if this woman was at the funeral and thanked, I'm so glad that I now have this position because now I can take care of my children. Yeah. Really, that one I wouldn't say that he really appointed him exactly at that time when the man
But you have
died.
another case of retired Justice Anup Singh.
Which one?
The Asian judge who was plucked from the UK straight to the bench in the High Court. Even when in the UK he was a disbarred lawyer, never went to the Service Commission. President Museveni went to London, was meeting Ugandans who were expelled from here. They said, we don't have people in the system. They gave him Anup Singh. Anup Singh became a judge, never went through the process of appointment. Just to make the point that Ssemujju is making, these things happen.
But how did Justice Anup Singh end?
Oh, he retired eventually. The challenge against his appointment was not determined before his retirement. So he retired and has the full benefit of a retired judge.
And he was doing
we need to move. Could we allow Honorable Ssemujju to conclude his thought and then we move on to the part of the discussion?
So the point I was making, about a month ago I was reading an article in Monitor when Museveni had called his advisors to advise them. So he does these things. The processes, he will undermine them once he's interested in particular people to serve in particular position. That's the point I was making, going back to what he used to say and what he used to push for, that I want the years of practice reduced, because at that time he had quarrels with the Mujunis in the Supreme Court and others, the Karokora. So he had wanted judges, what we call cadre judges. So those who are appointed, I think they can pick courage from the recent judgment of the Supreme Court, that even when you are brought by Museveni, you have a duty to the country, and that's why the country through Parliament gave you good salary but also a good retirement package. So the decisions you make are not decisions to please any authority, but decisions that will have impact on the lives of the Ugandans.
Moving on, a week tomorrow from that ruling of, from that decision of the Supreme Court, with seismic implications on whether civilians can be tried in the court-martial, and the court ruled that process is unconstitutional. But a week later, tomorrow, fruits of that judgment are yet to be seen, and a debate is raging across the country on what happens next. The Chief of Defense Forces today describes that decision, says it came as a shock, quite very unfortunate and quite unacceptable. Those are his words. I want to come back to you, Nicholas Opio, and ask, from your perspective as a lawyer, what does this mean? What is the lacuna in this judgment?
Well, I think first of all it's important to highlight what the court decided.
Yes.
Because there's a certain obsession about the trials of civilians. But the judgment of the Supreme Court was much more than the trials of civilians in the military court. First, the Supreme Court held that the General Court-Martial is a constitutional legal entity in as far as Parliament had the powers to enact the UPDF Act and create a court, albeit with a limited jurisdiction on disciplinary offences of the UPDF. Secondly, the court found that in its current structure and form, the General Court-Martial cannot pass the test of an independent, impartial tribunal, primarily because the members of that court do not have legal training, and yet they sit to decide cases, sometimes of death or long sentences, including life imprisonment. They don't have legal training. In fact, the Chief Justice put it, he equated it to a lawyer being sent to Mulago to go and do an operation, and the lawyer doesn't even know the distinction between a liver and a kidney. He might pluck out a kidney thinking it's a liver. Secondly, the Supreme Court found that the trials of servicemen before military court systems cannot pass the test of independent, fair trial, precisely because of the nature of the army, and that in trying to provide a different system for soldiers from other ordinary individuals, the UPDF Act is perpetuating a discriminatory practice, because a soldier doesn't lose his rights to fair trial on account of simply joining the army. The third thing the court said was that all trials of that court should stop, regardless of what cases it is, until these fair trial standards are met. And the court ordered for a transfer of pending cases to the ordinary courts for fresh adjudication. And so that is important. The statement of the CDF is really unfortunate. I think that perhaps he's right to be shocked. I don't think he's a very high-minded, legally trained individual. He's a soldier. But if you reflect on the law, if he took legal advice, the UPDF has fantastic lawyers. Some of them were my classmates. If he took legal advice, the CDF would discover that the army is governed by the Constitution, and that the power to make decisions in matters of dispute, including translation and interpretation of the Constitution, is that of the Supreme Court. And if he took advice, he would know that that is what he should follow as a CDF. But secondly, I think that the CDF and many people in the armed forces believe that power, in fact, not in practice, rests with them. And that they are therefore the ultimate arbiter of contestations in this country. And if you heard his statement, he says that they are the bedrock for Uganda's democracy, economic development. I think that is really, really a misinterpretation of the role of the armed forces in this country. If the CDF is fair-minded, he would focus on the reforms of the military justice system that the Supreme Court ordered to be undertaken.
Nicholas, I want to stay with you for a moment. You've seen a lot of the back and forth since that decision last Friday. You saw a debate in Parliament yesterday and the ruling of the Speaker to say, we can only talk, we can't do anything about this decision. The Honorable Ssemujju and his colleagues were moving and saying, suspend Parliament until government takes action. You saw that the lawyers went to visit the Attorney General. The lawyers also went and had a meeting with the
Chief Justice.
The Chief Justice, the Commissioner General of Prisons. Why explains this back and forth? What should have happened immediately after the ruling? Everybody seems to be in a gray area now.
No, I think what the court has done is to do their part and push this discussion to the executive. The court does not implement its own decision. Once a court makes a pronouncement, the executive must implement the decision of the Supreme Court. What should have happened was for the institutions of state to quickly begin to implement the decision of the court. The Attorney General should have asked the military, because he can't ask the court-martial. The court-martial has been essentially rendered illegal. They should have asked the army to begin to do a case census quickly, so we know how many people are being tried in that court and how many people have to be tried now by the civilian courts. That seems not to have happened, and what you're doing is ping-pong administrative dragging of the feet. Secondly, I think that for many people who have, because the Supreme Court did not free people, didn't say you are now declared free, you must therefore leave. You can argue that the court should have found that once an action is illegal, it should have therefore been declared a nullity and people should have been ordered to be freed. But the court fell short of that and simply said these cases must be transferred. Now, the court didn't order that people should be released. It now falls upon the parties who are affected by this judgment to begin to look for enforcement mechanisms. I've seen the lawyers for Dr. Kizza Besigye apply to court for habeas corpus. I think that the lawyers involved in some of these cases must take out an order of mandamus against the attorney.
I have the Minister for ICT and National Guidance, Vice Chairman of the National Resistance Movement, and sits on the Central Executive Committee representing Western Uganda, the Honorable Dr. Chris Bariomo. Very nice to have you. He also represents Kinkizi East constituency.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening, fellow panelists, good evening, viewers. Glad to be here this evening. Thank you very much.
We have Nicholas Opio. He's an advocate and an activist. Very nice to have you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Charles. Thank you for having me. Good evening to all the viewers.
We have senior citizen, the Honorable Miria Matembe. Very nice to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners. Is that all I am, senior citizen? You know what I am.
That is the package.
Child of God.
Child
Come
of God.
on, why do you forget that one?
Okay.
That is the summary of everything.
And we have from Kira Municipality, from the People's Front for Freedom, Shadow Minister for Finance, and frontliner, the Honorable Ibrahim Ssemujju Nganda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, and assalamu alaikum to the audience.
Thank you. The discussion tonight is anchored largely on major developments surrounding the judiciary. First, we're just receiving news. Can I ask the production, please put up those names once again, the changes in the judiciary on the bench, especially the position of Deputy Chief Justice that's now going to be filled by Justice Flavian Zeija, and the other new appointments. If you could just bring them up and we run through them. So Deputy Chief Justice, Justice of the Supreme Court, and 8 justices of the Court of Appeal who have been appointed by the President. In addition, you have another 21. So Justice Flavian Zeija is going to is becoming Deputy Chief Justice. You have Justice Muzamil Mutangula Chibedi joining the Court of Appeal. Supreme Court. And then we have the Court of Appeal there. Could you pull up the Court of Appeal? Yes. You have Her Worship Sarah Langasui, Sui, I think that's the pronunciation, Sui. Her Worship Rosemary Barebe Ngabirano, Her Worship Mary Babirie, Lillian Alum Omara, Charles Kasibayo, Her Worship Mary Kaitesi Kisache, Susan Odong, Karoli Luanga Semogerere, Joanita Gertrude Bushara. Could you pull that up a little bit more? Could you pull that up for me a little bit more? We ran through that. Yes, you have Flavia Grace Lamuno, Fatuma Nanziri Wanika, Kwemara Kafuz Jelase, Godfrey Himbaza, Andrew Kauka, Dr. Jinamia Melody Ngwatu, and Aida Nachiganda. You also have reappointment as acting judge of the High Court for 1 year, the Honorable Lady Justice Buchirwa Farida Shamila. Those appointments, there's some issues about, there's a decision on acting judges, whether that holds, and the wisdom in this, in the naming of an acting judge, the reappointment in an acting capacity. But so a quick take from the panelists here. I want to start with the active lawyer, the active advocate, Nicholas Opio. What do you make of these latest developments?
Well, the Deputy Chief Justice was due for retirement, I think somewhere around April. The appointment process was well underway before the term of the Judicial Service Commission, led by the Honorable Justice Kabito. Ended in January. So it is in order that the principal judge, that a Deputy Chief Justice be appointed to avoid the situation that we had when the Chief Justice, Emeritus Justice Benjamin Odoke, retired. We had a period where there was no Chief Justice. You had a Deputy Chief Justice acting as Chief Justice, at the same time holding the position of Deputy Chief Justice in Justice Kavuma. So this is an orderly transition. We congratulate Honorable the Principal Judge on his appointment. As we do the rest of the people who are appointed, I've seen some friends on the list, people who are known to me. But for me, really what is important are 2 things on this list. The injustice visited upon Lady Justice Bukirwa Farida gladly has come to an end. Remember that she was in the first lot of judges who were not confirmed after they had served what was called their acting capacity, really on account of frivolous allegations, a difference of opinion on her own judgment. I'm glad that injustice has ended. The second thing is, the third one, is the continuation of these appointments on acting capacity. The Constitutional Court has pronounced itself on that issue. Even before the Constitutional Court pronounced itself, 15 years ago, when I was still Secretary of the Law Society, two leading lawyers, Advocate Bruce Cherere and Advocate Barnabas, forget his other name is too long for my lower tongue, petitioned the Law Society, and we all had a resounding rejection of the concept of acting justices and judges of the Court of Judicature, because it offends the constitutional provision on independence of judges. A judge, the only thing a judge has is security of tenure. If you're on acting capacity, it means you're acting at the whim of somebody. And that matter eventually was taken to the Constitutional Court. The court has pronounced itself that appointment of judges and justices on acting capacities are unconstitutional. As far as I know, that judgment has been appealed, but what we continually see is the appointment of judges and justices in acting capacity.
The Attorney General applied for a stay of execution of that judgment.
He did apply for a stay of execution, but you see, you cannot stay declarations. Once the court has declared something that's unlawful, you can't stay declaration. See, a stay is to preserve status quo so that it's not destroyed. There is no status quo that was going to be destroyed if a declaration was upheld. Simply, anything else that was being done could still be rectified by the law. And I think that I contest very strongly the issuance of such stay orders for declarations on constitutional matters. And I think that anybody acting in good faith should listen to the decision of the Constitutional Court. Because in any event, it is the court that is close with the primary jurisdiction to interpret the Constitution.
Let me run through the list quickly. These appointments are made under Article 142(1) and 2 of the Constitution. The appointment of the Deputy Chief Justice, a Justice of the Supreme Court, and 8 Justices of the Court of Appeal on the advice of the Judicial Service Commission. In addition, the President has also appointed 21 judges of the High Court in acting capacity, which is what you've just been explaining there, into the Judiciary Service for a period of 2 years from the date of assumption of duty. So then he says, following the conclusion of disciplinary proceedings against her, the Honorable Lady Justice Buchirwa Farida Shamila has been reappointed as acting judge of the High Court for a period of 1 year. Let me run through the list. Deputy Chief Justice, the Honorable Justice Zeja Flavian, he is the current principal judge.
Yes.
Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Muzamil Mutangula Chibedi. Justices of the Court of Appeal, the Honorable Lady Justice Ketra Starisimbwa Katunguka, Honorable Lady Justice Sabiti Cornelia Kakoza, Stella Alibatese, Honorable Lady Justice Florence Nakachwa, Honorable Biaruhanga Jesse Rujema, Mosisi John Mike, the Honorable Justice Sekana Musa, the Honorable Lady Justice Nambayo Esther. Appointments as acting judges of the High Court for 2 years. Her Worship Sarah Langas Sui, Her Worship Rosemary Barebe Ngabirano, Her Worship Mary Babirie, Lillian Alum Omara, Charles Kasbayo, Her Worship Mary Kaitesi Chisache, Susan Odongo, Karoli Luanga Semogerere, Joanita Gertrude Bushara, Simon Peter Chinobe Mutegeki, Vincent Opiene, Sarah Birunji Kalibala, Isaac Teko Bone, Deepa Vama, Flavia Grace Lamuno, Fatuma Nanziri Bwanika, Kwemara Kafuzi Jelase, Godfrey Himbaza, Andrew Kauka, Dr. Jinamia Melody Ngwatu, and Ida Nachiganda. Appointment as acting judge of the High Court for 1 year, the Honorable Lady Justice Bukirwa Farida Shamila. Let me get quick comments from the other lawyer on the panel, the Honorable Dr. Miriam Matembe.
When she delivered the judgment. Sorry.
Dr. Matembe, quick comment on these latest appointments that we just received, and especially that one of the Deputy Chief Justice, who's the current principal judge, Justice Flavian Zaija, and the others.
Why do you bring that one singular?
No, I'm asking for your comment on the appointment. We're discussing the judiciary
For
on the show
me,
this evening.
I didn't come here to discuss this issue. It was not part of it.
Yes,
and
it's
as
breaking
you can
news.
say,
We just
it is
presented
breaking
it.
news.
Yes.
Now with breaking news, what do I say? First of all, I'm not a practicing advocate to know all these lawyers. Many of them are not are young, I think. They are not my age. So I don't know many of them. Actually, maybe the lady I know is Justice Katunguka. That one I know her very well because we are related through marriage. So I know her. Then I know Mr. Simon Peter Kinobe. That one.
Mutegeki.
He's Mutegeki.
Yes, Mutegeki.
I didn't know he was Mutegeki. My Mutegeki is the father of my daughter-in-law, but I think that one is a Munyankore. He cannot be a brother to this one. But I know Simon Peter. I know him as a Kinobe,
Yes.
as a distinguished advocate, because at one time he redeemed this grabbing, the land grabbers of my mother, who was, by the way, a mother to a bush war. My brother was called Lieutenant. He died at the level of Lieutenant Colonel or Colonel Yangombe, I have forgotten. And when he had passed on, the grabbers came to grab their land, and they declared my mother's quota for all the 60 years. But when I appealed, as an advocate, he came in, these high court judges, he crushed all those nonsensical judgments and redeemed the land of that widow. So I know him as he goes right. So I believe that one I can say I think he will be a good judge. Otherwise, the rest, what I observe, and I wouldn't have wanted to comment on this, what I observe is that there are so many women now who are being appointed judges, and I connect it with all the women these days. President Museveni appoints judges. You can see, like, for instance, all what are the IGGs? All the women, the IGG, deputy IGG, another deputy IGG, they are all distinguished ladies, and corruption is increasing completely. And you go to the City Council Kampala, is it called City Council? KCCA, women come in, and you know what goes on in there. So I've been saying, but this, and the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, all those and all the iron sheets were rooted and all that kind of thing. At one time, people were calling me and saying, Matembe says that whatever a woman does, she must do twice as much as a man to be considered as half. Then they were telling me, Matembe is right. They have done twice as much in terms of looting. Look at the iron sheets. They were saying that to me, embarrassing me, because, I fight for gender equality and women's empowerment, but I was not fighting for women going into positions of power, serving power without power. That's what hurts me. So otherwise I would be excited and say we are getting many more, but they are going into decisions of power, serve power without power themselves. That is the comment I want to make, which makes me sad. Then the other point, if they want to say that I'm negative, let them say. Let them prove themselves Now, the other thing which I note is really, surely I don't understand what President Museveni thinks. How can you go and appoint judges as acting? Acting what? How do I go? You see, he's testing them. You see how he makes them vulnerable? He makes them vulnerable because like the one who has been reappointed for 1 year to test whether he really makes the decisions which please the government. In case, so she's threatened, she will go and sit in that chair, and anything she thinks will not please Museveni, he will not judge rightly. You see, this is what I see. I hope Ugandans and these judges who are appointed can see that. Because why should you? There is a law. We made a law on how you appoint judges, their terms, and and the way you remove them. It is very, very clear. But now because he knows if he wants to remove judges whom he thinks are not supporting his wrong way of deciding his right, how he wants the case is decided, he will give you acting. And when you are acting, anytime you go. So you are not protected by the laws. So it's really wrong. I don't see why he abuses the authority of judiciary, undermining the third organ of the state. Really, all these things are bad. Don't you see, for instance, what is happening in the Bank of Uganda? Today I've been seeing all those people, financial whatever, looting. How can you have a Bank of Uganda without a governor? Up to now, I think we are going into 4th year. So he undermines and destroys the power and authority of institutions which should be governing our country well. That's what I can say out quickly. Otherwise, I was not ready to comment on these things.
Well, I take the opportunity to congratulate all those who have been
I
appointed.
didn't even congratulate.
We have been having a challenge of case backlog, and therefore more judges and more judicial officers should be appointed. So they handle most of the cases which are stuck in the judicial system. And notwithstanding Honorable Matembe's comments, I think it's good to see women and men. I'm sure if all of them were gentlemen, it would be an issue. But the fact that the combination of both genders, it's good. Even looking through it with a political lens, I think there is representation from different parts of the country. I'm sure it would be an issue if all of them were of one ethnic group, for instance. So I think it's good. Well, the issue of acting judges, since the matter is in the court, if the Constitutional Court ruled and then it was appealed, let's wait for the judgment or the ruling of the court. But I'm sure, yes, while an acting judge may appear vulnerable, but the procedures to remove that acting judge still remain the same. You won't just dismiss a judge simply because he or she is acting. You still have to go through that full procedure which is established by the Constitution and by the law. So I congratulate them and wish them their best.
Thank you.
Their positions, yes.
Someone who knows the language very well says, Justice Kibedi's second name is Mutangula. In Lusoga, it means don't buy or bribe me.